Is the next LA Kings number one goalie currently in the Kings system? We discuss next on Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening wherever you may be. And I hope you got that reference. Welcome to Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. On today's episode of Locked On LA Kings, we'll continue our look at the Kings goaltending position with a focus on the goalies in the LA Kings system that they have drafted recently and whether they're the future of the Kings in net or not. My name is Eddie Garcia. I'm your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for almost 30 years. For the past 20 plus years, I've been at the Fox Sports Radio Network, where I'm a co-host, sidekick, reporter, and NHL insider. I'm co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 16 years. We just celebrated our 17-year anniversary, so I'm told we're now in the 16th year. I don't know. Math, not my strong suit. I am a lifelong LA Kings fan, not a lifelong math fan, but a lifelong LA Kings fan. On Monday, we talked about Kings goalie Jonathan Quick and his future with the Kings following this season. On Tuesday, we talked about Cal Petersen and debated whether he is a legitimate number one goalie or not. And today, we will be talking about the future of the Los Angeles Kings and whether it is in the organization right now or not. We are going to look at 5 goalies and tell you a little bit about them and figure out if one of these guys maybe is the future in net for the LA Kings. We're going to go in alphabetical order, and the first goalie we're going to look at is a man named David Renick. Now, it is spelled H-R-E-N-A-K. He's 24 years old, 6'2", 181 pounds. He is from Slovakia. He was drafted in the 5th round, 144th overall in the 2018 draft, signed an entry-level contract with the Kings this past March. He appeared in 3 games for the Ontario Reign last season, going 1-1 with a 1.81 goals against average and a .951 save percentage. Before that, he spent 5 seasons at St. Cloud State in Minnesota, a very respectable U.S. hockey program, if you don't know. That program has produced 24 NHL players to date, including current LA King Blake Lizotte. In 5 seasons with the Huskies, Renick posted an 82, 44, and 14 record, a 2.39 goals against average, and a .909 save percentage. He also spent 1 season in the U.S. Hockey League for the Green Bay Gamblers. That was in the 2016-17 season. He had a 15, 14, and 1 record, 2.24 goals against average, and a .923 save percentage. In 2018, Renick played for Slovakia in the World Junior Championships. He was recently at the Kings development camp last month as well. His biggest hockey moment so far came in 2021 when he was named MVP of the Northeast region, when he gave up just 3 goals in wins over Boston University and Boston College to lead St. Cloud State to the Frozen Four, which is the national semifinals of college hockey. His career path is a bit similar to Cal Petersen, that he was a multiple-year U.S. college hockey player. He is a little bit older than the other prospects. He's also played more hockey, I guess that follows, than any other Kings current goalie prospects as well. So David Renick from Slovakia, one of the Kings players that could be the future in net for the LA Kings. The next goaltender we're going to look at is Jacobingham. He is 22 years old, 6'5", 205 pounds, from Barrie, Ontario in Canada. He was drafted in the 6th round, 175th overall in the 2018 draft. He signed a 3-year entry-level contract with the Kings in 2020. He's appeared in 6 total games for the Ontario Reign with a record of 3-2-1, a 4.14 goals against average, and a .902 save percentage at the AHL level. He did appear in 16 games last season in the ECHL for the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, which is a phenomenal nickname. Gotta love the Greenville Swamp Rabbits. For Ingham in the ECHL, he went 9-5-2, 2.71 goals against average, and a .909 save percentage. He also spent 4 seasons in the Ontario Hockey League with the Mississauga Steelheads and the Kitchener Rangers. In the 2019-20 season with Kitchener, he had a ridiculous record of 33-8-5, which led the league in wins, .96 goals against average and a .917 save percentage in junior hockey. For what it's worth, the Hockey News Special Prospects Unlimited issue listed Jacobingham as a sleeper for the Los Angeles Kings. So what does that mean? Usually a sleeper is a guy who not much is expected, but he's making strides and opening some eyes in the organization. So Jacobingham apparently a sleeper for the Los Angeles Kings, according to the Hockey News. Our next goaltender is Juho Markkanen. He's 20 years old, 6'2", 171 pounds. Now, he was born in Edmonton, Alberta, but he is from Finland. Now, he was born in Edmonton because his father, Jussi Markkanen, was playing goaltender for the Edmonton Oilers at the time. Jussi played 5 years in the NHL with the Oilers and had a brief stint with the Rangers as well, appearing in 128 career NHL games as a goalie. After his playing days, he moved the family back to Finland, and that is where his son, Juho, has played pretty much all of his career. For Juho, he did play most of his hockey in the Finnish League. He was a fourth-round pick, by the way, the Kings, 112th overall in 2020. He did see some playing time in the Swiss League last season with Lugano, and he did appear to have a rough go of it in the Finnish Elite League, at least last season. His record was 1-10-1 in 15 appearances. He had a 3.27 goals against average and an .873 save percentage. Unfortunately, not too many details on him because he has spent his entire hockey career to date overseas and has not played yet in North America as far as any competitive level. He was at the Kings development camp last month, so certainly was obviously in North America there. But not too much to share about Juho Markkanen other than you got to like the fact that he clearly has been mentored and groomed to play the position, I'm sure from a very early age, by his father, who was a former NHL goaltender. So he has been coached up, I would guess, probably a little bit more than other players at his age, 20 years of age, so far in his hockey life. Up next, we have Lukas Parikh. He is 21 years old, 6'4", 220 from the Czech Republic, drafted in the third round, 87th overall in 2019. He appeared in 5 games for the Ontario Reign last season, going 3-0-1, 3.77 goals against average and an .881 save percentage. Also played for the Rapid City Rush in the ECHL. 32 games there. He had a record of 14-8-8, 2.69 goals against average and a .915 save percentage. That was his totals there. In the 2020-21 season, he played for the Dubuque Fighting Saints in the U.S. Hockey League. He had a record of 15-8-4, 3.35 goals against average and .867 save percentage. And then in 2019-20, he played in the Western Hockey League for the Spokane Chiefs, went 22-7-2 in 32 games, 2.73 goals against average, and a .917 save percentage. Also played in the World Junior Championships in 2020 and 2021 for his native Czech Republic. One of his career highlights was a shutout, 29 saves in the World Juniors in a big upset of Russia. So Lukas Parikh, only 21 years of age, but he's been around. He's played in a lot of different places and at a lot of different levels. So a younger guy, but has a lot of experience at different levels of hockey. And finally, one name you might be familiar with would be Matt Villalta. He's 23 years old, 6'2", 185 pounds. He's from Kingston, Ontario in Canada. He was drafted in the third round, 72nd overall by the Kings in the 2017 draft. He was the number 1 goalie for the Ontario Reign last season, appearing in 46 games, posted a mark of 28, 10, and 7, a 2.98 goals against average, and a .903 save percentage in 94 career games with the Reign in the AHL over parts of 3 seasons. Villalta has a 50, 27, and 11 record, 3.19 goals against average, and an .897 save percentage. He also had 3 seasons in the Ontario Hockey League with Sioux Greyhounds and had a ridiculous 98, 20, and 2 record, 2.67 goals against average, and a .909 save percentage. Villalta has certainly been a winner everywhere he's played so far, and it kind of reminds you, we talked about Juho Markkanen and that tough year he had in the Finnish Elite League this last year, 1-10-1. And Villalta has had some good win-loss records. We do have to keep in mind with goaltenders, kind of like a quarterback in football, your offensive line, how they perform greatly impacts your level of performance, right? If you have an offensive line that can give you time to throw the ball, then you show what you can do and have varying degrees of success. If you don't have time to throw the ball, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're not going to do anything. So goaltenders are much the same in that they are reliant on the players in front of them, on the teams that they play for. If you play for a really bad team, likely you're not going to have great numbers. If you play on a really good team, you're going to have some pretty good numbers, usually at least the win-loss and things like that. Certainly can affect goals against and save percentage as well. But that's something to keep in mind when talking about these teams as well. And the Kings know this. The NHL, the talent evaluators know this. They take this into consideration when evaluating a player. If he's played on a really bad team, obviously he gets a little more slack, if you will. As far as Matt Villalta, I would say right now in the depth chart for the LA Kings, he would probably be number 4 on the depth chart. You would have, in my opinion, Jonathan Quick would be 1, Cal Peterson would be 2, Phoenix Copley would probably be 3, and then Matt Villalta would be 4. If you don't know about Phoenix Copley, he's worth mentioning, although he shouldn't be considered on this list because we're talking about who could be the number 1 goalie for the Kings down the road in the future. Is the future of the net for the Kings amongst the players in the organization right now. Phoenix Copley is not on that list because he's 30 years old. He's bounced around. He's had some time in the NHL, most recently with the Washington Capitals, before that with the St. Louis Blues. And he's been brought in as the Garrett Sparks for the Kings for this year. If you remember, Garrett Sparks got into, 1 or 2 games last year as a guy who's been at the NHL level, but is just a veteran at this point. Because of COVID, or maybe if there's minor injuries, you'd like to have a guy with some NHL experience that you could bring up for a game or two and be okay with it. And that's Phoenix Copley. If something happens to Jonathan Quick or Cal Peterson this season, and there's an illness or they're out for just a minor injury, they need somebody to come in and back up, and who isn't going to be overwhelmed if he gets into an NHL game, that's Phoenix Copley. Matt Villalta, they're going to want him again at the AHL level to continue to develop, get the bulk of starts there, and Phoenix Copley will be like the veteran mentor backup guy in the AHL. So that's the list of Kings prospects, the top 5 guys that we could have as the future in net for the LA Kings. Again, we've got David Renick, 24 years old from Slovakia. You've got Jacobingham, 22-year-old from Canada. Juho Markkinen, 20-year-old from Finland. Lucas Parikh, the 21-year-old from the Czech Republic, and Matt Villalta, the 23-year-old from Canada. That is the list of Kings prospects at the goaltender position. And look, I saw a couple of these guys play briefly in a scrimmage at the Kings development camp. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm an expert on any of these guys, but the people who are experts, the people in the know, and the people that you read about and you listen to, it seems to be of the opinion that it is unlikely that the next number 1 goaltender beyond Jonathan Quick and Cal Peterson is going to come from this group. Now, we don't know that for sure. And if you know hockey, you know the goaltending position takes longer to develop. Forwards a little bit quicker, defensemen take a little bit longer, but goaltenders usually, generally speaking, take longer to develop. And so one of these guys could very well develop into something, but it's going to take years to find out. And we'll see how it goes from there. But again, it does appear that the next Kings number 1 goalie is either someone they haven't drafted yet or someone they're likely going to get from somewhere else. And Mark Yannetti, the Kings' longtime director of amateur scouting, said as much recently on a podcast that I was listening to. I think it was the All the Kings Men podcast with Zach Dooley and Jesse Cohen. And I'm paraphrasing here on what he said. But they asked him about the goaltending position because they were just breaking down the NHL draft, and they were asking about kind of the prospects in the system. And he said something to the effect of, it's difficult to get a number 1 goalie where the Kings have been drafting goalies, and it's a lot easier to go out and get a goalie than it is to draft and develop a goalie. So he kind of, I'm sure he's not closing the door on anybody that we talked about. But it did seem like from those comments that what we are hearing, he's kind of reinforcing that a little bit. It looks like that beyond Cal Peterson, the Kings are likely going to have to go out and get someone from another organization. But again, that is yet to be seen and proven. We will have to wait and see how it plays out. But for now, we know this season we've got Cal Peterson and Jonathan Quick. We know for the next 2 seasons after this year, Cal Peterson's under contract. making $5 million a year. He's going to be on the Kings roster. Whether Quick is or not, it remains to be seen. And whether one of these 5 goaltenders that we mentioned eventually develops into an NHL caliber goalie, all remains to be seen. But that is the list. That is the future, possibly in net for the Los Angeles Kings. We did talk about Cal Peterson on Tuesday's show, and I said that I didn't know how confident I was in him being the number 1 goalie going forward. So I put out a poll question on the Locked On LA Kings Twitter account at Locked On LA Kings, and I asked you, our Twitter followers, this question: how confident are you that Cal Peterson can be the Kings' number 1 goalie now or in the near future? We had 3 options: very confident, totally unsure, or not confident at all. Leading the voting was totally unsure at 41%. Not confident at all was second with 30%, and very confident was last at 29%. So that's a very small sample size, not too scientific, but just fun to get the pulse of some of our listeners and viewers and what they think. And for the record, I didn't vote, but if I would have voted, I also would have said totally unsure at this point. Hopeful that he can turn into a number 1 goalie, but at this point, I haven't seen it yet, and I'm a little bit concerned that we're going to see it at all eventually, as far as Cal Peterson turning into a number 1 NHL caliber netminder. We'll see if I can cook up another poll question later on today, maybe to talk about the Kings prospects. We'll see if we put that out there. If we do, I'll let you know. And also thank you to all who participated and voted in our Locked On LA Kings Twitter poll from yesterday. Hey, if you'd like to place a wager on the LA Kings to win the Stanley Cup next season, betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the number 1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, combat sports, esports, and even golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. So I mentioned Major League Baseball, and I hope you will indulge me for a moment if you will allow me to just comment briefly on the passing of Vin Scully, the longtime Los Angeles Dodgers announcer, passed away last night at the age of 94. And if you're here in Los Angeles, you know the impact that Vin Scully had on this area and what the impact of his passing, the news of it, has meant to a lot of people. It's a very sad day here in Los Angeles as we reflect on someone who we grew up with. It's funny, I work for the Fox Sports Radio Network, and we talked a lot about Vin Scully on our shows last night. And our technical producer is a diehard Dodger fan. I think he's in his early 30s. I'm 52 years old, and it was so amusing to me and appropriate as well that he and I both had the same reaction and feeling about the passing of Vin Scully, that in some kind of a way, a part of our childhood died because he and I, despite being 20 years difference in age, both grew up as kids listening to Vin Scully on the radio over our summer vacations. I have great memories of going to my next door neighbor's house. He had a pool. He was a huge Dodger fan, and he invited me and some of the other friends in the neighborhood. We could come over and go swimming over the summer in his pool whenever we wanted. And he was always out there in his pool or laying in a chair, by the pool. And he had the radio on with Vin Scully and the Dodgers always. And that was like the soundtrack of my childhood and my summers growing up. So great memories of that. And from a standpoint of a broadcaster, I always greatly admired Vin Scully. I never had the pleasure of meeting the man. I know a lot of people who did meet him and work with him and had nothing but amazing things to say about what a wonderful person he was. And obviously his professionalism. He was one of the greatest of all time, maybe the greatest of all time. And we were fortunate to have him in our sports lives here in Los Angeles. And tying it to the LA Kings, we had Bob Miller, who was our version of Vin Scully for sure. Many, many years as the Kings broadcaster, the face of the franchise over many generations. I have met Bob Miller, and he is an extremely nice man and was a Hall of Fame broadcaster, obviously. I know he had some comments about the passing of Vin Scully. And Vin Scully wasn't just a baseball guy. He was a sports fan, and he was a fan of all the Los Angeles sports teams. And the Kings and the Dodgers have a kind of an interesting connection. There are a lot of Kings players who are Dodger fans, and they have those, Kings night at the Dodger game, Dodger night at the Kings game, things like that. But the Kings won their 2 Stanley Cups while the Dodgers were playing home games, and I remember the reaction at Dodger Stadium and Vin Scully talking about it on the radio when the Kings won their cups. And Bob Miller was talking about how when the Kings won the cup, how genuinely happy Vin Scully was for Bob Miller, for the LA Kings organization, for Kings fans, and for the city of Los Angeles to add another championship, to their sports landscape. And I remember when the Stanley Cup went to Dodger Stadium, and I definitely remember going to Dodger Stadium for the Stadium Series game between the Kings and the Ducks. And it would have been a special event if Vin Scully hadn't have been there. But it was awesome that he was there, and to remember Vin Scully on the field with Bob Miller next to each other with microphones in hand, and Vin Scully welcoming all the great hockey fans in Southern California to Dodger Stadium. That was an awesome, awesome moment. There were so many moments with Vin Scully. It was sad to hear that news. And, he will be missed greatly. But we were very, very fortunate to have Vin Scully in our lives as sports fans here in Los Angeles. Didn't want to pass along just a couple of quick notes. The NHL announcing today that the 2022-23 composite preseason schedule is out. It will run from September 24th to October 8th, and the LA Kings preseason opener, if you don't know it already, September 25th in San Jose against the Sharks. Hey, just a reminder that the Locked On NHL podcast has you covered for all your league-wide NHL talk with a rotating cast of local hosts from the Locked On NHL channel, breaking down the biggest stories in hockey 5 days a week. Subscribe for free on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. As we close out the show, we did have a Pacific Division rival report, and it involves the Calgary Flames. They did sign talented winger Andrew Mangiapane to a 3-year contract with $17.4 million, avoiding arbitration. Mangiapane is 26 years old, coming off a career year where he scored 35 goals and had 55 points, playing in all 82 games for the reigning Pacific Division champions. He was 4th on the team in goals and points. And remember, this is a team that lost its top 2 goal scorers and points producers, and Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk. So Andrew Mangiapane will take on a greater role offensively for the Flames next season. Also, Calgary signing up-and-coming defenseman Oliver Shillington. He gets a 2-year contract worth $5 million. So the Calgary Flames certainly have taken a hit this offseason with losing a couple of very key players, but they still have a very talented roster. They have a great goaltender in Jacob Markstrom, and they're coached, of course, by Daryl Sutter, who we know is going to keep their nose to the grindstone and be someone who can push them to maybe prove some doubters wrong next season. But there's no doubt the Flames have taken a step back as far as the talent. But how far of a step back? I still think they are definitely in contention for a top 3 spot in the Pacific and potentially a wild card spot out of the Western Conference as well. So that's some news involving the Calgary Flames in our Pacific Division rival report. Coming up on Thursday's show, we will update you on any Kings news that happens over the next 24 hours. And I think we're going to take a look, a little bit of an in-depth look into the Kings' number 1 line for next season: Anze Kopitar, Adrian Kempe, Kevin Fiala, and how do they stack up against the other top lines in the Pacific Division, the Western Conference, and in the entire NHL? We're going to do a little research on that, and we'll see and discuss where the Kings' number 1 line fits in the landscape of the NHL. To keep up to date on this show and what's going on with the LA Kings, please follow us on Twitter. We are at Locked On LA Kings. If you'd like to send me an email with any comments or thoughts on the Kings or this show or anything else, you can send me an email, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE, lockedoneddie@gmail.com. We do have a Friday weekly feature, which features your emails. Also want to thank you for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day, and also want to invite you to make your second listen every day, Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast of all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Thank you very much for listening and for watching on YouTube to Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia, reminding you, as always, go Kings, go.